Alan Wake is not your typical video game hero. He's a famous horror novelist. He lives in a posh Manhattan condo. He wears a suit jacket with leather elbow patches. You wouldn't expect to see a guy like that running around a creepy nighttime forest wielding shotguns, hunting rifles, and flashbang grenades. But when a dark, nebulous presence kidnaps his wife and sends an army of possessed local townspeople chasing after him, Alan Wake goes on the warpath. This new game bearing his name delivers a powerful and twisted storyline that's anchored by solid third-person shooting and some of the thickest, moodiest atmosphere you're going to find in just about any game. After a string of hit novels, Wake is on his third year of severe writer's block. So he and his wife Alice head to the sleepy Pacific Northwestern logging town of Bright Falls in search of new inspiration. But the couple barely has time to unpack their bags before Alice goes missing and Wake himself comes to in the middle of a car crash with a week-long hole in his memory. You'll spend most of the game chasing down clues to what happened during that missing week, as well as the nature of the dark thing that's taken over Bright Falls and why exactly it wants to get its shadowy tendrils around Alan himself. Now, usually the phrase episodic gaming means a series of short games released on some kind of regular schedule. But Alan Wake is different. It's a complete boxed game that internally breaks itself into episodes that sort of resemble a serialized TV show. This format really lets the writers play around with the flow of the action, building up to all sorts of just holy crap reveal moments at the end of each episode. It's a great way to move the story along and deliver cliffhangers every so often that make you really want to keep going so you can uncover more pieces of the supernatural puzzle. Alan Wake has been in development so long that by the time it finally hit my Xbox, I really wasn't sure what kind of game to expect. But deep down, Alan Wake is a third-person shooter. You'll spend the majority of the game traipsing through spooky nighttime forests, lumber yards, cliffsides, and Bright Falls itself, wielding that small arsenal of firearms against townspeople possessed by the darkness and bent on your demise. The game is made by the Max Payne guys over at Remedy, and their experience crafting fine shooters is obvious in the fluid, precise movement and shooting controls. There's even a nifty little cinematic dodge move that mostly works as intended and makes you feel a little quicker on your feet against all the darkened rubes who chase you through most of the game. Everything about Alan Wake's gameplay revolves around the interplay between the darkness of your adversaries and the light you can shine on them using, well, really whatever you can get your hands on. Flashlights, road flares, headlights, industrial lanterns, anything you find that produces illumination is a potential weapon against the darkness. And the designers find a lot of clever ways to let you use the environment to fight back against the shadows that are constantly threatening to overwhelm you. On the flip side, there are a few really tense moments where your ammo and light sources are scarce, and the best you can hope for is just to kind of scramble wildly from one brightly lit safe zone to the next. The light and dark mechanics add some really nice, creative variety to the shooting in this game. Even so, the action in Alan Wake stretches itself a little thinner than it ought to, since there are really only 4 or 5 types of enemies you're going to fight again and again through the entire game. At some point in the last quarter or so, I just kind of wanted to get on with the shooting so I could fill in the next gap in the storyline, which honestly probably says as much about the great intrigue of the plot as it does the lack of variety in the combat. The game is also relentlessly linear. The levels are designed pretty much in a straight path, and there's a directional icon that you can't even disable that constantly points you toward your goal. At least there are a ton of collectibles to find, though, and most of them really enhance the game's atmosphere. There's this great old small-town AM radio host that fills you in on what's happening in Bright Falls when you find little radios scattered off to the side that you turn on. And there's the Remedy trademark fake TV show that here is like an even more bizarre version of The Twilight Zone. Most importantly, there are dozens of loose pages lying around from a manuscript that Wake doesn't even remember writing, but that strangely seem to describe the very events he's experiencing. Finding these pages is optional, but reading them is a must if you really want to fill in some of the minor key elements of the storyline. I just can't say enough about how thick and effective the gloomy, foreboding visual design is in this game. You really just need to see it in person to appreciate it. In the highly specific category of scary nighttime forests, Remedy really has set a new standard here. The artists seem to understand the value of not letting you see too much. The foliage always seems just dense enough to disorient you, and there's really an expert use of mist and fast-moving shadows and elements like that to really set the mood and kind of obscure the threats that are constantly stalking you. There's a basic primal sort of fear that you get from seeing stuff like an axe-wielding maniac silhouetted against a foggy backlit tree line, or hundreds of birds circling the sky overhead and swooping down to attack you. The game looks fantastic from start to finish, and it never fails to keep this sense of dread running at full tilt all the time.
I wish you a good stay in my cabin. I'll come by later to check how you've settled in. And to meet your wife.
Alan Wake's not quite perfect, but it's a damn good action game with an incredible sense of atmosphere and a lot of surprising, uncanny elements. I love the unlikely approach of casting an author in the role of hero, and the game gets a lot of mileage out of this trick with references to other masters of the macabre like Stephen King and Hitchcock, not to mention frequent voiceover narration that sounds just ham-handed enough to have come straight out of one of Wake's own bestsellers. There's a bold, adventurous spirit to the design of Alan Wake, and while it might take Remedy ages to get a game out, Alan Wake is proof that their long labors are still worth waiting for.
Dark presence was trying to destroy me. It all felt real, but it matched a textbook case of insanity.
Don't you agree, Zach?